Road at Frome at the scene of an accident. And that's the very latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Don't miss out on your chance to win a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. It's extra cash that could really make a difference to your coming year. You could find yourself on that holiday you've always wanted to take, buy that treat that always seemed out of reach, or just send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could be yours, but time is ticking. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World, and tonight I'm joined by Matthew Stadland, political commentator, the former UKIP leader, Henry Bolton, broadcaster and journalist, Alistair Stewart, and TikTok sensation, Jessie Lefterry. But first, let's go to the news.
Very good evening to you. Back to Lee in just a few minutes. First, though, a look at the headlines tonight and the top story. Hannah Lynch, the final missing passenger to be recovered from a sunken super yacht, is being described tonight as cheeky, endlessly caring and unintentionally hilarious. Her sister has paid tribute to her after a body believed to be that of the 18-year-old daughter of tech tycoon Mike Lynch was brought to shore. Family have also released this photograph of Mr Lynch and his daughter. It comes as 6 bodies have been found in the search of the wreckage, taking the total number of confirmed people to have died to 7. The Energy Secretary has admitted the price cap rise will be deeply worrying for many families, amid concerns more people could fall behind on their energy bills. The price cap's going up by 10% from October for millions of households across England, Scotland and Wales. They face an average annual bill of £1,700, which Ofgem is blaming on higher wholesale costs. Ed Miliband says he understands why people are concerned.
I know this will be really worrying news for lots of families who will face even greater struggles this winter. And it's a direct result of our country's exposure to international gas markets that are controlled by dictators, and that is a legacy left to us by the last government. That's why this government has a plan to do something about it. Our mission for clean, homegrown power that we control in this country.
Ed Miliband. Well, Elsie Stancombe's teacher told her funeral service today she made everyone smile just by being her. The 7-year-old schoolgirl was among 3 who were stabbed to death in Southport last month. Her family said they want today to be known as Elsie's special day and a celebration of her life. Magistrates in England and Wales have been told to stop jailing people for several weeks to try to ease overcrowding in prisons. Offenders who are likely to serve time behind bars are to have their sentencing hearings postponed days after emergency measures kicked in. It allows defendants to be held in custody cells for longer after last month an early release scheme was announced. It's being reported that several Secret Service agents in the US are facing disciplinary action following the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. Some networks there are suggesting 5 or 6 agents have been put on leave, but the exact number isn't known. It is understood the agents include the head of the Pittsburgh field office, 3 other agents, and a member of Trump's personal detail. And finally, a migrant has been killed in Greece after the Coast Guard there fired at a boat carrying 14 people. Authorities say shots were fired at the vessel, ignoring the warnings, and performed dangerous manoeuvres. The 39-year-old, believed to be from Kuwait, was likely hit by a bullet aimed at the boat's engine. Prosecutors have also ordered the arrest of the officer who fired those shots. Those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, I'm Sam Francis, back with you in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World. I'm Lee Anderson, Reform UK Member of Parliament for Ashfield, and joining me tonight is the former leader of UKIP, which is Henry Bolton, and firm favourite of the show, Matthew Stadlen, Twitter favourite as well, a good friend of mine. Look, guys, let's get straight to it. Matthew's laughing already. We've seen this week the Labour Party have been recruiting from within, giving some of their, well, one of their friends, another friend, a job in the civil service. This is Jessica Sargent, by the way. This is on the back of Sue Gray, who came in a while back. Is this jobs for the boys or jobs for the girls, Henry? Are they stitching up the whole civil service for their own gains?
I think they are, yes. Instead of dealing with the problems within the civil service, because Tony Blair, years ago, brought in mobility. He got rid of specialists, particularly in the Foreign Office, but Home Office as well. And instead of dealing with those systemic problems, they're bringing in their own people, and some of them, Jessica Sargent, for example, into a position that is supposed to be overseeing the integrity and the impartiality of the civil service. So, you know, this is, I can see it as no other motivation than political influence over the civil service. And even if that's not the intention, then their naivety and their political ineptitude in doing this is one of the results, because they're demonstrating, even if it's not deliberate,
the thing
they're making it look.
The thing, Henry,
it's
to me, the thing that makes it look even worse is the fact they never even advertise a job externally.
Right. Yep, correct. And indeed, when you look at the recruitment for senior civil servants now, a lot of them, there's a lot of window dressing there. They have the Civil Service Commissioner there. They have, and they will respond to applicants saying, well, no, this was all above board. There were these measures. But when you actually look at it, there are absolutely no checks and balances. It's very easy to appoint somebody into a senior civil service post, even if it is advertised, appoint somebody that you've already decided.
Let me bring Matthew, our left in the corner in. Matthew, is this political skullduggery?
May I begin, Lee, just to say it's rather ironic that I've been left in the corner, given that Labour have a whopping majority and Reform have 5 MPs. But let's overlook that just for the purposes of good television.
Is waffling?
No,
that's not an answer.
To begin with, I absolutely stand by the importance of the independence of the civil service. And we should explain to people, if they don't know already, why that matters. It matters because...
I think people already know that, Matthew.
Well,
that's a little bit condescending.
I don't mean to be condescending, because I'm not sure this story has reached beyond Westminster, the Westminster Village. Doesn't mean it's not important. Why it does matter is because any government needs to be able to rely on its civil service. It needs to rely on an impartial civil service. So let's say, for example, that the Conservatives win the next election in 5 years' time. Unlikely, you might say. They need to be able to rely on impartial civil servants to do their bidding effectively and to advise them impartially. So it matters. Has Labour flooded the civil service with its own, in your words, boys and girls? Clearly not. You've given a couple of examples. Is there any evidence so far that the ministerial code has been broken? I don't think there is. If it turns out that the ministerial code has been broken, then of course there will have to be repercussions. And I don't care whether you're left, right or in the middle, we should all stand up for an independent civil service.
Oh, you see, it says they're impartial, should be impartial, Henry, which I totally agree with. But I know from serving as an MP for the Conservative Party, they weren't at all impartial a lot of the time. And one of the jobs is, you know, if I'm honest, of the civil service, is to push back sometimes on ministers and say, look, you shouldn't be doing this or you should be doing that. That's fine. But ultimately, the politicians make the decisions and you know, if it goes wrong, it's their fault. But
indeed.
Can it be impartial?
I think the civil service can be impartial. It's about the ethos of the organisation, the cultural, the institutional culture in the civil service. And if that is really professional and we've got the best people there who believe that they are there to serve the government, then I think it can be. But the problem with this is that it goes another step towards undermining that ethos. The other thing is that, I mean, it's all very well, Matthew, you saying that the, you know, they're not being flooded with Labour supporters and apparatchiks, but just imagine for a moment if this was the Conservative government doing it. There would have been an outcry, and I think, Matthew, to be honest, you'd have been one of the first leading that charge. And I think that, again, we need to deal with the flaws in the civil service rather than politicise it. Because, I mean, and go back to the ethos, I was, years ago, the senior advisor to the Secretary-General of the world's largest intergovernmental security organisation. And he said to me, you're always giving me, you know, telling me what you think I should do. I said, I'm your senior advisor, Secretary-General. I advise, you decide. And that's how it should be in the civil service. We don't want a civil service that is actually shaping the decision according to its own political beliefs.
But Henry, I've been very clear. I've said that the civil service has to be impartial, and I hope I've explained clearly why it is that matters. So I don't care whether it's a Labour government or a Tory government who are putting their people, if that is what has happened, into civil service jobs. I will call it out. What I've said is that there doesn't seem to be any evidence so far that the ministerial code has been broken.
Don't you think, Matthew, this job should have been advertised for people to apply for? Maybe you would apply for the job, or Henry. Surely it should be advertised out there in the big, wide world.
I'm a believer in transparency when it comes to public service jobs. I think jobs should be advertised and advertised beyond either internal or indeed given to people, to friends or to supporters, if that is what has happened.
Matthew, if I may, even if there is no sort of foul play or no sort of intention behind this, apart from to appoint the best person for the job, how does this look? It looks appalling, and just in presentational terms, it undermines the integrity and the trust that we should have in this.
I can see your point, but let's just row back for a second. Lee began this conversation by saying effectively that Labour were flooding the civil service with their boys and with their girls. Clearly no such thing has happened, or there is no evidence for such a thing to have happened. You've named a couple of examples. They may well be looked into, and of course it's right that this Labour government is being scrutinised, and it's called...
But that's the thing, though. That's the thing, though, Matthew. It's not being scrutinised.
Well, it is by you here on GB News.
It's not. It's not being scrutinised. We've seen already that the Labour Party, the Labour government could. It was in their gift to allow us, to the Reform UK MPs, to have seats on the select committees. They turned that down. But look, what we're going to change the subject slightly now. I know you, Matthew, will be going to the Notting Hill Carnival.
Yeah, well, I've already extended an invitation to you.
Well, listen, we want to know, will you be twerking with female police officers at the weekend? And if not, why not?
I'm not a twerker, Lee. But I'll tell you this, I mean, you're going to... Whatever happens...
You've been called worse, haven't you?
Whatever happens by you, Lee...
I can't even imagine it.
You get very personal on social media. I just tried to hold you to account as an elected representative. No, but on a serious point, you guys in Reform, some of you have been making a big deal of this two-tier policing thing, right? I don't think that there's much evidence for that. I think it actually...
Really?
Yeah, let me finish my point. I think it endangers police forces, actually, this poisonous narrative. We found out recently that I think it's black children of colour, are much more likely to be strip searched by police than white children. And
why is that, Matthew?
You'd have to ask the police.
Is it because
the
they
police,
commit more knife crimes?
The police themselves, Lee, said in many cases this wasn't justified. Certainly in some cases it wasn't justified. If we go to the Notting Hill Carnival, and you would honestly, I mean it, you'd be welcome in Notting Hill. I'd show you around. We go for a dance. I'll leave the twerking to you. But actually, when you have police officers joining in, not with criminals, but with people who are having harmless fun.
What, you mean the sexual gyrating in front of women?
I'm not a fan of the sexual gyrating, but if you have a harmless...
Should they be arrested for doing that?
Let me finish. If you have a harmless dance at a carnival for a few seconds and it gets captured on video, I think that's good for community relations.
He's talking about harmless dancing.
There are so many things there. First of all, I was a police officer, and I can tell you that people don't like to talk about it, and back in the 90s, police chief constables were being sacked for saying what I'm going to say now, but it's absolutely true.
Say it, Henry.
That different communities in our population have, in different towns, have a propensity towards different types of crime. That is a fact. Any police officer will tell you that, if they're being honest. And so, you will have one part of the community that is, or the town's population that will be dealing with car-related crime, another one Class B drugs, another one Class A drugs, and so on and so forth. And the fact of the matter is that you respond accordingly. Now, it is a fact as well that in London, the majority of victims and offenders in terms of knife crime are black. It is a fact that certain communities are prolific, more so than others, in their dealing in drugs. Now, you have to search those people, and that doesn't mean to say that they are any worse in terms of criminality than anybody else, but they have a type of criminality, or are involved in it, that requires a certain policing response. If you deny that fact, then you are denying the police the opportunity to be effective.
I think you're in denial.
Hang on.
That's what it's saying.
I think this is a really difficult and sensitive conversation. It's a conversation we absolutely can and should be had. Well, let me explain why. I can quite see that if a particular community is overrepresented in a particular type of crime, let's say knife crime, there might be the temptation to do more stop and searching of those people. What is the problem with that? It is that if you are an innocent person of colour, an innocent young black man, you are going to be stopped disproportionately, even though you're completely innocent. And that is damaging. And that's why it's difficult.
Let me come in here, because that's absolute rubbish.
Well, it's not rubbish. It's
if the police do stop and search in Ashfield, which they do, 99% of the people they stop will be young white boys. Mm-hmm. Is that discrimination?
Well, what's the percentage of white people in Ashfield? I don't know.
Probably 97%.
The point I'm making, Lee, why I brought in this strip searching of children...
Oh, we're not
no, that's important. The reason I brought it in is because it said something like you're 4 times more likely if you're a young person of colour to be strip searched as a child than a white person. So that gives the lie to your idea that there is two-tier policing.
Look, guys, we're going to have to calm it down before it kicks off, or we might have to call the police in to this part of the show. Look, do not go away, because coming up next, we've got journalist and broadcaster Alistair Stewart.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Joined now by the founder of Quintet London, Tanta Masulishvili, who channels her experience and fervour for fashion into her innovative brands which produce artworks on silk. You brought in some lovely things which we'll discuss in just a moment. Tell me a little bit about the complexity of printing an artist's idea onto silk. Is that a difficult thing to do?
It's actually very simple, because we just simply ask our clients a set of questions to find out what they like, their experiences, their favorite objects or anything they desire. We create out of this information preliminary sketch, show it to clients until it's perfect. We change it according to their needs.
Are you saying that everything that you're doing here is personalised to a client? It's a commission from a client?
Every single piece is totally unique. We make each individual piece for the client taste. So every single piece is totally different. And what is nice, for example, we do like wedding favors, corporate gifts, investors' gifts, and every single time we would match the theme throughout to the actual company theme and so on.
Now, here we have a series of little silk ties. Am I right to call them ties?
This one's actually called Twillies. Twilly.
Yes. I didn't know the word Twilly.
Yes.
These have a name. So this is the name of your client in this case. This one is Amanda, I think.
Exactly. So actually, these are our signature design. So if you want to give someone something quickly, but just simply add their names, you can order from our website, and you just simply need to insert their name, and we can produce it on your favorite color combination. But then, obviously, our main product is totally unique pieces which are bespoke.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back to Lee Anderson's Real World, and joining me now is broadcasting legend, Alistair Stewart. Nice to meet you, Alistair.
Great to see you, Lee, and thanks for having me on.
Now, you're welcome. Now, you started working for Southern Television in 1976. I was just a nipper then, just a young lad. But what first... There must have been sort of some aspiration when you were going through school and college or whatever, that you wanted to be on the TV, wanted to read the news, wanted to be involved in the media somehow. Why was that?
The honest answer is there isn't. When I was at university, I wanted to do what you ended up doing. Yeah. My ambition then was to... I did economics at Bristol University, and it was to go then and read law at LSE, and I had a place for that, and then become a barrister, which a lot of your colleagues do that little court work in the morning and then legislation in the afternoon. I did get involved in student journalism, but much more in student politics. And it was when I was doing a public meeting for NUS, which I was deputy president of, in Winchester, the local student union got in touch with the local ITV company, Southern TV, and said, we've got this big wig up talking to us about teacher training, which was one of the things I cared about a great deal. And I appeared on the television programme as a guest. And the editor of the programme said, you're quite good at this thing, you should come and join us. Have you ever considered it as a career? And I said, no. And it was my dad, who was a group captain of the Royal Air Force, who said, you must be mad. Job offer at your age, no degree yet, nothing, go for it. So I called them and said, can we come and have a chat? So that's how it was. So it wasn't a kind of childhood ambition.
What was your first job there?
It was brilliant because it really tested. There was a story in the Daily Mail that said the average Englishman had 250 quid's worth of clothes in his wardrobe, and that was it. So the editor, a man called Terry Johnson, said, OK, there's 250 quid. Go down to Southampton.
A lot of money in them days.
A hell of a lot of money. Buy an outfit. And I'd got a pair of shoes, got suit, shirt, tie. And he then, when I got back, he said, right, put it on and then model it, as it were, in the TV studio, and we'll talk about it. And so that was my first job, was to go shopping, put the kit on, and then walk around the studio. And it really was a classic case of swim or sink, and fortunately, touch wood, I swam.
Wow, 250 quid. I bet that in the 70s was probably like, I don't know, 5 or 6 weeks' wages.
I would have thought so, yes. Yes, quite comfortably so.
So you were you the longest-serving newsreader on TV?
I think that's true, although Kay Burley may dispute that, although Kay is not really a newsreader because she's more a presenter and interviewer.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was reading the news in the 1970s through the 1980s. At one stage, I was the only ITV employee who'd read all of the bulletins, including Channel 4 News and News at 10 and the rest of them.
Did you ever, obviously, reading the news, it's live TV, I would imagine. Do you ever get the jitters?
Yes, absolutely. And it is live. I mean, it includes recorded bits, whether it's the film reports from people, you know, in the Middle East or wherever it might be. But the studio stuff is all live. And you do get the jitters. And funnily enough, going back to Southern TV, one of the best presenters, reporters there was a lovely bloke called James Montgomery, who also did music programmes. And I remember asking him exactly the same question that you've just asked me, because I knew he'd been around in the business for years. Do you ever get nervous? You know, when the little red light goes on top of the camera. And he said, yes, every time. And he said this, he said, when you don't, that's the time to stop. If you start taking it for granted. And that was a good piece of advice.
So obviously you're reading the news day in, day out for many, many years. There must have been some times when a bit of news broke, you think to yourself, wow, this is a biggie. So can you just like tell me which were probably the couple of biggest news stories that you actually broke?
Yes, the Shuttle Challenger, which exploded seconds, minutes maybe, but certainly not long after takeoff.
I remember that.
And that was the one, it was heartbreaking because it was the one where there was a young woman teacher on board. And all of her kids were, as it were, in the audience down at Cape Canaveral, and their mums and dads. And that was dreadful. I was quite interested in the Shuttle Challenger shuttle programme anyway. But literally nobody initially knew what had gone wrong. And it was quite complicated. And it became we went into the studio to do a news flash for 15, 20 seconds, and we were in for over half an hour. And that was extraordinary. The other one, which was quite shocking, other end of the spectrum, is I'd finished doing news at 10, and I went back to the hotel I was staying in to come in and work the next day. And it broke that Michael Jackson, the pop star, who then became famous for all sorts of other things subsequently. But anyway, he'd been rushed to hospital. And I was rushed back to the studio. And again, we did a news flash on that. And you'll remember maybe it was quite mysterious. And now it's a little bit like that poor guy from Friends. It looks as if doctors had misused him and given him all sorts of dodgy stuff. But anyway, those two are kind of standout ones.
That's true. So just moving on a little bit, Alistair. Obviously, I mean, you're still active. 72, is that right? You're 72 at the moment. And I think it was last year that you was diagnosed with vascular dementia. What sort of... I mean, that must be a lot to take in. But obviously, there must have been some sort of telltale signs that made you go to the doctors to get diagnosed.
Yes, both my wife and I and a number of our friends were getting a bit worried, including the lovely people at GB News that I was working with. Because, like you, I had a brilliant team of people who helped me put the programme together. And they've observed that I was turning up at the studio earlier than I needed to. And I was sometimes looking a bit dishevelled. I hadn't done my tie properly, talking of which. Or maybe my shoes weren't done up properly. And one of them said, are you sure you're okay? And then my wife observed I couldn't tell the time on an old-fashioned sweep hand clock. And bits and pieces like that. And the word I used to describe it was kind of discombobulated. So I went to the GP and said, look, I think I might have early onset dementia. And he said, I don't know. I'm a GP. The only way we can know is to have an MRI scan. And we had that without a waiting list, thank God. And it showed that I had had a series of minor strokes. And that is what causes vascular dementia. And bits of your brain... Perhaps the bit of your brain that looks after doing up your tie or where you left your glasses or whatever it might be is shut down. My long-term memory, touch wood, is still okay, but my short-term memory was pretty blown.
Wow. So I guess you coming out as you did and going public on it, that's encouraged more people to come out, which surely is a good thing. Alistair?
I hope so, yes. And you used the expression coming out. That was, funnily enough, exactly the expression my wife used.
Yeah.
But you've got to come out to let our friends know what's really going on, but also hopefully to encourage people, because at the moment there's no cure for it, but there are very good charities and bits of the NHS that are working on how to perhaps try and find a cure or help people who've got vascular dementia. There's a lot of work going on Alzheimer's, and I don't have Alzheimer's. So that was important to come out and to encourage people, because there are things you can do to help prevent it getting worse. For example, give up smoking. Don't drink heavily. Ideally, don't drink at all. Take regular exercise, get your blood pressure down, and touch wood, it won't get any worse.
Well, that's an incredible story, Alistair. Thanks for coming on my show.
It's a pleasure.
It's an absolute
a real
pleasure to meet you. But coming up next, we've got right versus left.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update, brought to you from the Met Office. Through this weekend, it's going to remain fairly cool and wet for many of us on Saturday. Drier and a little bit warmer through the rest of the weekend, though. It's been a disruptive start to the day with Storm Lillian. That's now moved away into the North Sea. Behind it is a clearer picture. We're starting to pick up more of a southwesterly wind. That will drag in some showers to parts of southwestern Scotland, many western areas of Scotland, in fact, as well as Northern Ireland through the first part of the night. But over to the second part of the night, the early hours of Saturday, we look to the south, where a band of very heavy rain moves into many southern counties. Lots of cloud pulling in from the south as well, ahead of that across the Wales and the Midlands. Now, there is a rain warning in force for many eastern areas of England, particularly the south and east, where we could see around 60 millimetres of rain falling throughout Saturday morning. And with lots of people travelling around, there could be some disruption on the roads and delays to travel. Further north, a slightly drier picture, but still some pretty heavy showers are likely for parts of Scotland and northwestern England. A drier picture, though, for the far north of Scotland, as well as the north and east across parts of Aberdeenshire and the Moray coast. And here it should stay relatively dry and bright through much of the day, but showers will continue to affect the north and west, as well as some areas of Wales and southwestern England. Now, the heaviest rain will clear away to the far south and east, but showers will likely move into these areas later on in the afternoon. So a pretty mixed picture for most of us on Saturday. With quite brisk winds still through the day, it's still going to feel on the cooler side of things. We could see temperatures sticking around in the mid-teens for many of us. On Sunday, it looks a little bit warmer. There will be more in the way of sunshine, particularly through the morning across parts of England and Wales, but the next batch of rain will spread into parts of the northwest. Doesn't look quite as heavy, but will introduce quite a lot of cloud and some quite widespread drizzly rain. More widely dry as we look ahead to Monday, and temperatures will start to rise much closer to average. And we're looking at the mid-20s by Tuesday.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christys. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes, she could have said Storm. You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done. Or I can become something different. Patrick Christys tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's time for Right versus Left with Henry Bolton and Matthew Stadlen.
Where right is wrong and left is right.
Oh, yeah, right, OK. There you go, that's a good start, isn't it? Look, we saw a tweet this week, Matthew, from the Home Office. I thought it was a parody count at the beginning, because they put this graphic out about the 1,000 people who had been caught rioting and, in the recent...
who'd been arrested.
Had been arrested, sorry. They'd been arrested, and it said something like, these criminals will face the full force of the law. Words to that effect. Now, the Home Office, in my opinion, should not be calling these people criminals until they've been to court and been found guilty.
If they're found guilty.
If they're found guilty, or indeed if they are criminals, have got a criminal past. Surely they should take that tweet down and apologise.
Well, I mean, it's even worse than this week. I think it was last week, so it's been up for a while. It's had a lot of scrutiny, and rightly so. Yeah. And I actually rang up the Home Office yesterday, knowing that we would be talking about this on the show, and I said, essentially, what's going on?
Yeah.
First of all, I suggested that they might be in contempt of court, the Home Office. How absurd does that sound? Because you don't want to be prejudicing a trial. They said, well, no, because we haven't named any individuals, so they might be right on that bit, I'm not sure. But what they are wrong about is to suggest that you might be guilty before proven guilty in a court of law. That is a foundational principle of our justice system. It's foundational to our democracy, beyond just the ballot box. You are innocent until proven guilty. And therefore, for the Home Office to put out a post like that and then refuse to take it down, and they stood by it, by the way, when I called them up. They stood by it. I said, I would like you to give my feedback that it should be taken down. They said they'd pass it on, but I haven't checked this morning, but certainly by that point it was still up, and that's wrong.
OK. So if the Home Office are standing by this, Henry, then surely the buck stops with Yvette Cooper, who's the Home Secretary, she's ultimately responsible for the Home Office. What's going off here? This is a slippery slope.
Well, is it political? Are they trying to send a message here that absolutely is inappropriate for the very reasons that Matthew said? And the other thing is, look, somebody else might have authorised this. Is this Yvette Cooper being unable to deal with her senior civil servants, who probably signed off on this? Whatever. This is a very bad look for Yvette Cooper and for the Labour government.
I guess this is...
And it's very easily solved.
Yes. But this goes back, though, and what we were talking about previously about, the civil service. Are they the tail wagging the dog? Ultimately, it should be the Home Secretary's decision. And, in my opinion, she should apologise and order them to take it down. That would be, for me, a show of strength, not a sign of weakness.
I think it's a bit much to say that the Home Secretary is sort of responsible for it going up, because she has to delegate. There's so much going on in the Home Office.
But she can ask for it to be removed.
She certainly can, and she should be able to rely upon the acumen of senior civil servants to know what is politically appropriate and what is not, and in this case, legally appropriate and what is not. If you're dealing with people of that calibre,
I would suggest, as I already have, that post should come down. More broadly, I think that Starmer and the government have handled those appalling riots, some of the most shameful scenes we have ever witnessed in this country, well. They have sent out, as a government, a very, very strong message, as have the courts, that this sort of racist, far-right violence, and indeed violence of any sort, will not be tolerated. And I would like to take this opportunity, if I may, Lee, to ask you to say, I think that they have sent out that message, because I was on my holidays in Wales, I think it was in July, when those appalling riots happened in Leeds, that awful riot. And you were very quick to jump on that, and you said that these animals, your words, and we were talking mostly of people of colour, that they should be locked up forever. And I thought that was a disgraceful post.
If you want to go down this road, that's fine by me, Matthew. Henry's a former police officer. We saw the video of these two young men knocking hell out of these police women. One suffered a broken nose. They was punching them relentless. They would not have stopped unless they were tasered and put to the ground. And these animals should be locked up. They should be caged.
I absolutely agree with that. But we've got to treat everybody the same. And the problem with your position, Matthew, is that I didn't hear you saying that when Black Lives Matter people were rioting, looting, smashing places.
So you're an avid follower of my social media posts,
were you condemning them?
Any violence?
Right.
No, you've asked me a question.
No. Because I condemned publicly. I put a video out on Twitter and on TikTok condemning these riots, OK? But I want to know, as I did the Black Lives Matter ones, as I do the blockage of roads by the eco-terrorists, the Just Stop Oil people, all of these people, the criminal damage that takes place, I condemn the lot of it. It is all criminal, and it needs to be dealt with. What I don't hear coming from the government, and what I don't hear coming from left activists and people like yourself, Matthew, is equal condemnation across the board. So condemn those riots by all means, but I would say two things, give you two pieces of advice. Condemn violence and criminal damage and obstruction of the highway, whoever is responsible, and make sure that when you do that, you also address the underlying concerns. The left were absolutely passionate about us addressing the concerns underlying the Black Lives Matter riots. Well, why doesn't the government actually acknowledge that it's entirely legitimate to have a concern, a worry and anxiety about the rate of immigration and the impact on housing, public services, the rule of law, our politics, our culture and our society without, and you can do that entirely innocently, entirely justifiably, and the government is not going to take the wind out of the sails. They might suppress the riots, but they're not going to deal with the problem unless they acknowledge that.
I'd be absolutely unequivocal, which is what I've been asking Lee to be. There is no place in our society for violence. There's no place for riots, whether that's Leeds, in Hare Hills or anywhere else. And any violence that took place in those Black Lives Matter protests in 2020, I was on the radio covering them at the time on another broadcaster, any violence that took place is completely unacceptable. So you talk about underlying issues. I think it was absolutely right that what the government did, and as indeed what the courts have done, is crack down first and foremost on the appalling racist violence that we saw in those far-right riots of a couple of weeks ago. You say that we're not tackling, or that the government is not tackling, that we're not having a conversation. We're not having a conversation about what you describe as underlying issues.
How do you know
let me finish.
Let me finish. Who are these far-right people?
People, for example, who set fire to property around an asylum hotel, Lee. If that's not far-right, tell me what is. And let me finish my point. You talk about underlying issues. We've been talking about immigration almost non-stop for I don't know how many years. It was one of the key issues of the recent general election where every eligible adult in this country had a chance to vote. So don't tell me that we don't talk about underlying issues.
You're not talking about it in relation to these problems. You're not.
I'm not interested in whether people are... What people are motivated by. If they're motivated by concerns about immigration, it doesn't give them the option to go and riot violently.
I didn't riot. I've got a legitimate concern. A lot of people...
And we discussed your concerns.
Yes, but a lot of people don't have this platform. A lot of people...
So they're allowed to be violent?
No, I did not say that. So don't put those words in my mouth.
You're contrasting our right to have this platform with people who were violent.
You're not listening to me.
I'm listening to every word you've said.
This is the problem. You guys just do not listen.
Don't lump me together with other people. I'm an individual.
Right, and I am trying to represent the interests of the people out there who have anxiety and worries about the situation, and the government is basically denying them. They're putting this down as the impression, and impressions matter, okay? The perceptions matter, because that's people's reality. The government is being perceived as simply not responding to those legitimate concerns from peaceful, law-abiding...
We've just had a general election where people like Lee ran on a ticket about mass migration, as you would put it, and illegal immigration. So, and you did get. So therefore, it's not being ignored.
It is being ignored.
We have a democracy. We're having a conversation. We're talking about it now.
Why is the Prime Minister talking about racist motivation?
Because they were racist.
Yeah, there was a small number, and those riots, those problems, were a great deal smaller than the ones we've seen previously. I don't justify them.
They were widespread, unfortunately.
So have the others been. Now, my point is that you are sitting here and you are trying to defend the position of the British government at the moment, the Labour government, in not responding to the concern of law-abiding, peaceful people who have concerns.
Wait, what do you mean they're not?
All it takes is for the Prime Minister...
Lee, you've got to intervene, because I'm not having a chance to put my case.
All it takes, Matthew, is for the Prime Minister or the Home Secretary to say, we acknowledge that there are widespread concerns and anxiety about the rate of immigration and its impact on society.
Have you been asleep for the last 2 months? Labour said they were going to try and bring down immigration levels ahead of the last election. And what have we heard this week alone? Yvette Cooper is saying that she is going to try and deport more people, whether you agree with it or not, and there'll be plenty of people who don't agree with it, but you would agree with it. They're going to deport more people than anyone since 2018. So the idea that this is being ignored, you are either being mendacious,
Matthew,
or you haven't been paying attention.
Now. You know you're on my turf now.
This is all of our turf.
Right.
We all have an interest in how our country is run. You don't own it.
I know how to manage the borders, okay?
Do you?
Yes, I do.
How did you get on with that?
I haven't run our borders. I applied for the job to be Border Security Commander, and I didn't even get an interview.
You should have been a Labour Party member.
So you think you know how to run your borders. You think you know how to run our borders. The people who had the opportunity to give you the job obviously didn't, because they didn't give you the job.
Matthew, if you look at my record, and we'll have that discussion if you want, I will give you evidence after evidence after evidence of where I've succeeded in helping other governments deal with problems such as small boats.
Enough for you to get the job.
But I'm not a Labour Party activist, am I?
We haven't had Labour in power for 14 years. They've only been in power for 2 months.
Yes, but the job is being advertised now. They're doing the selection. My point is,
immigration has been talked about, and illegal immigration has been talked about year after year after year after year.
There's no effective plan, and
that's your right to say so. And you had a right to vote, and I'm sure you voted for reform in your constituency. But don't pretend it hasn't been talked about, because it has.
Matthew, in the context of these riots, which is what you want to talk about, it has not been discussed. It has not been acknowledged.
There's no excuse for rioting. You deal with the criminality. That's it. And you call far right for what it is. You call racism and xenophobia for what it is.
Do what you want.
You can do what you want.
Where is your
Antifa? Well, there's an Antifa riot. I'm not going to. This is just crazy.
It is crazy. Guys, just tone it down a little bit. We get a little bit heated, a little bit red-faced.
Complaints from the neighbours.
Henry, calm it down. You're going to get into a difficult, period in your life. Just calm it down. Coming up next, we've got Last Orders with Jessie Leftieri.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel. Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Let's have a look at this story in the Telegraph, Charlie. And this is about Anglican Church, the Church of England, dropping the word church in favour of something a bit more modern sounding. Words such as community. Why are we afraid of the word church?
Well, that's my question. I mean, you've got to assume that they think it solves some kind of problem. But I think, there are a lot of people who feel very strongly about their particular religious institution, whatever they all have different names, don't they? And if you rename one, do you have to rename all of them? Can we no longer use an individual name for different religions, community buildings?
Are you religious?
I'm spiritual.
You sound like him, yeah.
No, certainly.
Don't get any started on me.
Do I believe in a God? Yes. Do I believe in any of the particular gods that are offered to us? Still undecided.
I'm like you. I said exactly that.
You two are the same. You two are exactly
What about you, Anna? Are you particularly religious?
Well, I'm not a proper religious. I won't name myself as a religious, but I really do respect religions. And we have bigger problems to think about.
Is it a sign of where we're at in this secular society?
Yes.
We're moving more and more towards that. The Anglican Church feels that the only way to be relevant is to take away any reference to church going, to being religious.
I think if the substance of what you're offering is good, it doesn't matter what it's called. So if people are going to find solace and peace in a place that makes them feel better, they're not going to care too much about what it's called. So I think relabelling it, rebranding it, I don't know, maybe it'll help, maybe it won't, but it's going to certainly upset a lot of people, I should think.
And people whose religion is important to them and kind of central to their lives, you can imagine.
Absolutely.
There's a reason Justin Welby is nicknamed by some quarters the Archbishop of Woke. Maybe this adds fuel to the fire, who knows?
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
That's Last Orders at the bar. The bell's just rung. Not a very strong bell. That's our producer, Hassan. Pathetic ring, Hassan. Must do better. He had one job. But joining me now, we've got Jessie Leftieri.
Yeah.
You are a TikTok influencer.
I am.
And I believe this started during COVID. You're one of the success stories of
Yeah, no, well, definitely. I'd like to think so. But do you know what? Yeah, I started it during lockdown. It was more of like a boredom thing to do at home, kept me like entertained, and it just allowed me to do something that I enjoyed. And just from doing it and just posting the videos, I just got a lot of attraction from it, and more people started to follow me, and I was like, oh wow, this is amazing.
Yeah,
so I've
I've got a lot of followers on TikTok. I've got about 15,000.
Oh, you could beat me.
How many have you got?
640,000.
Oh, then there's nothing to brag about it, is there?
No, do you know what? It's amazing, and I'm so grateful for everyone that's followed me. It definitely, like, over time, it's built up, and it's genuinely through, like, the love of doing it.
Yeah. So we got, in politics as well, we've noticed that a lot of young people are on TikTok are getting influenced politically as well. I sort of was pretty slow to realise that, but I know that a lot of some young people are not engaged in politics, but some are, and they are influenced by what happens on TikTok.
Yeah, no, do you know what? I definitely think that's one of like today's like issues, is that definitely so many young people nowadays are so easily influenced, and all it takes is just for someone to watch one video and their whole perception on a subject can change. And I think like talking about any sort of subject, politics, anything like that, someone can have one view and they'll watch a video, and rather that being true or false information, their just whole view and mindset will change on it. And I think that's why it's so important to me to always, what I'm posting constantly is to have such a positive impact, because you have no idea what
you've got to be careful,
do.
Jess, because some people will say to me, have you seen, this is a fact, and I'll say, well, how do you know? It's on Facebook, it's on TikTok, and it's not fact, someone's just made it up.
Yeah.
But your videos, you must get a lot of traction with those. What's the most amount of views you've had on one video?
I actually had about 15 million views on a video once. And it was because I was supporting my local football team, West Ham. I am a Hammers girl. But yeah, no, I got a lot of attraction. And do you know what? Even something silly like that.
They haven't got 15 million fans, have they, West Ham?
Oh, we have many fans. We're all loyal to our club. But even just a silly video like that, I had people just making comments going, oh, I'm a West Ham supporter now. And do you know what? It just opened my eyes, just something so silly like that, and just how it can just make a little switch in someone's brain and be like, oh, well, I'm West Ham.
So we say that you was a success story of lockdown. You started doing your TikTok, became like a TikTok personality. But you've had some health problems as well. I know that. You had like a skin condition, which can be very inhibiting. It can affect your mental health as well as your physical health. Tell me about that, because that's important.
So, do you know what? I never really suffered from skin conditions before, and then I went on holiday with my family about August 2022. And
Where
then
did you go?
Cyprus. It was lovely. And all of a sudden, this skin condition on my face and on my hands, arm, neck just suddenly appeared. And it's actually still undiagnosed. I went to so many different doctors. They were telling me, no, it's not psoriasis, you've never had eczema, it's not that. It's some sort of dermatitis. And I was going round and round in circles. And it got to the point where in about October, it got so bad that it was blistering, painful. I didn't want to leave my house. And it really put a hold on, obviously, like my career as a TikToker, because doing videos, I didn't want to do anything. I mean, I'm so thankful and grateful for the support of my family and my friends who really like helped me through it. But I think conditions like that, they do need to be talked about more, because even young girls or boys with just like severe acne, it can really affect mental health. It can really affect, because it's on your face.
Yeah, you're conscious, aren't you?
Exactly. It's the first thing you look up in the morning, and instantly your mind is put into oh, I look like this, I don't look presentable. And I think that's why as well with my platform, I really like to push that out there, because I don't want other young people to wake up and feel like they're alone, because that's how I felt at the time. I thought, but there was no one else around me who I thought was suffering like this. And I was like, oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know like how to act, who to talk to. And you know what, pushing it out and talking to other people, it made other people like realise and be like, actually, no, I suffer something from like this as well. And the amount of people that are messaging me and saying, oh, like I've suffered like this before. And
that's good.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, maybe online more so these days, they get bullied. You know, and you know, we see it from. Sometimes I've had, you know, reports from school children doing it, sharing photos of people online and bullying because somebody looks a particular way. But it's good that somebody like you, who was an influencer, can speak up for these people.
Yeah, no, do you know what? And I think one thing I've 100% learned about this is, I know it's so cliche to say, but you've just got to be yourself. You've just got to push yourself out there. And I always say that confidence is fake it till you make it.
Right.
Just always push yourself out there and just do what you want to do.
Right then, Jess, we've got a pint pot here. Okay.
This is pressure for
This
me.
is not pressure. Here, Alan. So
Thank
the Foster's
you.
one there.
Right, Foster's.
You've got 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
To pull a pint.
Okay.
And I won't take the Michael. I'll watch you. I'll encourage you. I will coach.
Thank you.
Go for it.
Do you know what? I actually used to work.
You can tell
in
straight away. You've
a
got the
golf
angle.
club
Yeah, you've got
when
the angle.
I was about.
You worked at the golf club.
Yeah, I did. I worked in a golf club when I was about 18 years old.
Okay. And that is pretty much perfect. We have had some guests on the show who shall remain nameless.
Bosh. That's my pint.
Who poured what we could say a lot worse. That's perfect. You'd actually get full price for that.
Thank you so much.
How long did you work at the golf club for?
I worked at a golf club for about 2 years.
Yeah.
Do you know what? It was one of my favourite jobs growing up because I got.
Growing up? How old are you now? Growing up? How old are you?
I'm 21.
21. Okay. Old person.
Don't say that. You're fresh as a daisy.
Yeah, okay.
But no, do you know what? It was one of my favourite jobs because I got to talk to so many people, so many different age groups, and it was I mean, I was chatting away for ages. I used to stay on shift for about 2 hours just to have a chat.
So all those years ago when you were 18?
Yeah, all those years ago, back in the old days.
Back in the day, yeah, when times were tough.
Yeah.
When times were tough. So, I mean, you're looking when times were tough, Jess, in COVID.
Yeah.
When people like me, a lot of people like you away, which I'm not proud of. And, you know, I can understand the first lockdown. I get that because it was new to us. And we had discussions in private, obviously, about not having another lockdown. I was against the other lockdowns. I think what we should have done is locked all our... Well, not locked, that's an unkind word, but made sure that our elderly, our vulnerable, people really at risk from the virus were looked after and locked away and kept safe, and let the rest of the population crack on. Because young people and children didn't really suffer from COVID, but mentally they did because we removed kids from school, we stopped young people like you seeing your friends. But, you know, as a result, an unintended consequence of that, if you like, is you taking to TikTok, but you're just one in a million, aren't you?
Do you know what? I'm very lucky that that was the outcome from it. And obviously, I think the first out lockdown was different because it was sunshine, but the other ones specifically were hard. It was winter. I mean, naturally, it's a bit about like winter depression, isn't it? Your mood just changes. But it was hard just staying in and not being able to socialise or see your friends. I mean, if you were to lock someone in for a certain amount of time, that makes the mind just naturally just lose the ability to socialise.
That's On the Paw with Jessie Lethberry. Thanks, Ellen. It's been a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you very much.
There you go. Thank you for joining me on Lee Anderson's Real World. It's been another great show with some great guests. But coming up next, we've got Friday Night Live.
Warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Through this weekend, it's going to remain fairly cool and wet for many of us on Saturday. Drier and a little bit warmer through the rest of the weekend, though. It's been a disruptive start to the day with Storm Lillian. That's now moved away into the North Sea. Behind it is a clearer picture. We're starting to pick up more of a southwesterly wind. That will drag in some showers to parts of southwestern Scotland, many western areas of Scotland, in fact, as well as Northern Ireland through the first part of the night. But over to the second part of the night, the early hours of Saturday, we look to the south where a band of very heavy rain moves into many southern counties. Lots of cloud pulling in from the south as well, ahead of that across the Wales and the Midlands. Now, there is a rain warning in force for many eastern areas of England, particularly the south and east, where we could see around 60 millimetres of rain falling throughout Saturday morning. And with lots of people travelling around, there could be some disruption on the roads and delays to travel. Further north, a slightly drier picture, but still some pretty heavy showers are likely for parts of Scotland and northwestern England.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We could be calling you with the news that you've won our latest Great British giveaway, an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash.
Hi, I'm John from sunny North Yorkshire, and I've just won £20,000 in the GB News Great British giveaway. It didn't cost much to enter, but of course if you're not in, you can't win. And here I am having won £20,000, and that's tax-free, so I'm rather pleased I did it.
For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text